When Jimmy Neuter was a kid, he spent a lot of time with his grandfather, an iron worker who built Chicago skyscrapers. Jimmy says this photo taken 9 stories up says a lot about him.
He was a badass. I mean, he was just meat and potatoes. He worked hard for his life, and I learned a lot from him.
Jimmy says he learned a love of history and about the beauty of things made by hand. Jimmy Neuter does architectural salvage. Sometimes he finds what you'd expect in an old house, and he's got a warehouse full of pre-1930 gems. But he also has to be open to the unexpected things a house might offer up. A few months ago, Jimmy was working in a house on the north side of Chicago, and it held a big surprise.
From the outside, I mean, you drive right by and think nothing of it.
And even inside, there wasn't much of interest. But sometimes, he says, you just get a feeling.
There's something here. Beyond what you're seeing, there's something here. It's a weird thing to say. I just don't know how to explain it.
He climbed into the unfinished attic. Nothing but insulation. All he found were some old business cards and letters. He was about ready to leave.
Just at that point, I stumbled on the first glass plate.
They were glass plate negatives, dozens of them, the kind common in photography until the early 20th century.
The very, very first image that I held up and was able to blow off, I saw this big giant dog. I don't know if it was a Burmese mountain dog or a St. Bernard. And that's a strange picture. I put that one off to the side, and then I saw a really beautiful portrait of a woman.
There were more than 75 altogether, and he brought them back to his warehouse.
And then the next picture I saw was a family in a living room and a bunch of portraits in the background, really sophisticated paintings.
But these were all negative images. He wanted a better look. He brought the plates home, where there was an amazingly coincidental resource. Jimmy's partner, Carrie McCluskey, is an artist who works at the Art Institute of Chicago and specializes in glass plate negatives.
They were over 100 years old. It was amazing. They're so tough. If this would have been film, it never would have survived.
And when they started scanning, what they saw took their breath away.
And there were so many of them of a family, and not in a studio, but in their home and in their backyard. And then we realized it was the same house that he found him in. It was just like, it just kept unfolding.
There were many pictures of a woman and her daughter, often with the big dog. There were scenes of men gathering, and then some shots of other people posing, sometimes in front of a white cloth or newspaper. But who was this family? And why did they have this kind of camera, usually used in a studio for more formal portraits? There were clues in the papers Jimmy found in that attic.
One of the names that kept coming back up was a Herman Schultz, and so I just arbitrarily punched Herman in Google, found out that there was a Herman Schultz who happened to be a famous portrait painter.
That would explain all the paintings in the living room and the people posing. He must have used them as a reference for portraits. There is just one photo of someone who appears to be the dad, and then a posed shot of the same man. Jimmy found out that Herman Schultz was from Norway.
Came to America around 1892 and was commissioned by Carter Harrison, the mayor of Chicago, to paint his portrait for the World's Fair.
A Norwegian-American museum has a collection of his paintings, one of which is a portrait of his wife and dog, visible in this photograph taken in their living room. Herman's wife was Hedvig, and they had one daughter, Sigrid, born in 1893. When Jimmy Googled them, the bombshell discovery came late at night.
Carrie was in bed by then, And I quietly said, Carrie, I think I just found something really cool.
It turns out that this little girl with the big dog grew up to be a groundbreaking foreign correspondent for the Chicago Tribune.
She was a very, very big deal.
Ron Grossman is a longtime Chicago Tribune reporter and its unofficial historian. He says Sigrid Schultz held positions unheard of for a woman in her time.
She was appointed just after World War I as a correspondent for the Tribune stationed in Berlin, rose to be the chief of that bureau and eventually chief of all the bureaus in Central Europe.
During the 30s, Sigrid Schultz became a key voice from inside Germany, reporting on what was already occurring there.
Some of her material she feared would not get past the censors, so she wrote it under a fake byline, John Dixon, and usually went to a nearby foreign country to file the material.
The Schultz family had left that house and Chicago many years earlier, in 1901, when Sigrid was 8. She grew up in Germany and France. The house had at least 9 more owners before it was torn down in 2018. None of them, apparently, ever thought to look very carefully in the attic.